do want to say that breakdowns can become breakthroughs if you use them right. Breakdowns can become breakthroughs if you use them right. And I think Detroit is the best example that we have of that in the country. I think this incredible second act, second chance, rebound, recovery, comeback story in Detroit is something that the country needs as the election comes here. Michigan's going to be key for both parties. I want you guys to recognize that what you're doing is beautiful. So to put some meat on the bones of those ideas, I want to tell you some stories. I want to tell you a story about a guy named Barack Obama, who I got a chance to work for. I want to tell you a story about a guy named Prince, who I also got a chance to work for. And about a guy named Newt Gingrich, who I got a chance to work with. And I don't know that many people who can tell a story about Obama, Prince, and Newt, but I can, so I'm going to. The reason I can tell those stories is because I was raised by good parents. My father was born in 1944 in Memphis, Tennessee, in a neighborhood they called Orange Mound. It was the biggest black ghetto in the South when he was born there. He was born in a house that you would refer to now as a shotgun shack. Segregation, poverty. But my father joined the military, who we honored earlier, to get out of poverty. Everybody else was running out the military. My father ran into the military to get out of the hood. And when he got out of the military, he went to a little black college called Lane College, put himself through college. And he married the college president's daughter, my mother, because my dad had it like that. And he wasn't no dummy. My mom and my dad then went on to put my father's little brother through college and a cousin through college. And every person in my family who got out of poverty on this bridge called my father's back. And when my father died, the picture that we put on the funeral program was him standing outside of Yale Law School the day I graduated with his hands in the air. And he told me that day, he said, "Son, you are a ninth generation American, ninth generation, but you're the first person in this family that was born with all your rights recognized by this government. And look at what you've been able to do. Look what you've been able to do." So I thought about all the things that my father had been able to do and my mother had been able to do, starting literally with nothing. And I turned down a bunch of jobs to go make a bunch of money in New York. I regret that now. Regret that. Regret it. But at the time, I thought I should go and help people. And actually, I'm glad I did. I moved to Oakland, California, and I started working with kids who were going to jail for drugs in the 1990s. And it was such a sad experience for me, an outrageous experience for me, because when I was at Yale, I saw kids doing drugs. I never did any myself. Again, I was scared of my father. But I saw kids doing drugs at Yale. At worst, those kids went to rehab, or maybe Europe or something. But nobody even called the police on those kids. They got help. But I saw how a few blocks away, kids in the housing projects in New Haven doing fewer drugs and selling fewer drugs wound up going to prison in large numbers. So I felt that I should do something about it. I felt guilty. And I wanted to do something about it. I had a law degree. I was 24 years old. I had dreadlocks down my back. Dad didn't like that much. But I spent a lot of time trying to fix the justice system. And I burned out. We closed 5 abusive youth prisons in California. We had some victories, but they were costly. I went to a lot of funerals with a lot of kids in the caskets and a lot of old people sitting up in the pews, which is not what a funeral is supposed to be. And I burned out. I had a breakdown. And I had to walk away from that work. But in trying to get healthy myself, I discovered a whole world of healing. I got therapy. I discovered meditation, salads, all kind of stuff I wasn't used to. And I was able to go back to the hood with a whole new mentality. I was able to talk about solar panels and hybrid cars and organic food and all this stuff. People thought I lost my mind, but they saw how passionate I was. We wound up doing something in Oakland that changed my life. We created something in Oakland called the Oakland Green Jobs Corps, training young people off the street corners to put up solar panels, because we had just passed all these laws in California to expand the solar industry. People were ready to have solar panels on their houses. Businesses were in place, subsidies in place, consumer demand. No solar panels going up because there were no workers to put them up. I said, you got the most important work that needs to be done, cleaning up the environment with clean energy. I've got the people who most need the work. They're standing on street corners right now. Let me put them to work, help me. And Oakland helped us get this program off the ground. And it was so beautiful seeing these young guys, mostly guys, go from standing in front of folks' houses, annoying people, to going on top of people's houses and putting up solar panels and helping people. And a woman named Nancy Pelosi had just become Speaker of the House in 2007, and she was so impressed by what we did. She took me by the hand to Washington, D.C., just straight off the streets of Oakland, and had me testify in front of every one of her committees. And we got a guy named George W. Bush to sign a bill called the Green Jobs Act of 2007 to spread that little program all across the country. And then I got a chance to write a book about it. The book became a bestseller. And some people read the book who worked for a guy named Barack Obama. And that same year when Obama became president, he invited me to go to the White House and work with him. And I had the opportunity to oversee $80 billion worth of stimulus money going to green and clean solutions. Breakdowns can become breakthroughs if you use them right. I left the White House under fire. Some of the conservative critics of Obama pointed out that I had been a left-wing, berserkly radical in my 20s, and they were correct. You got me. So I left under fire. We created thousands of jobs. We helped a lot of businesses get off the ground, but I left under fire. I had another breakdown. By this point, I'm a parent. I got 2 little kids. I've been to the very height, and now I'm in the very depths. And I'll tell you something if you're in politics. As long as you have your position, your phone rings a lot. Don't take it personally. The day I left my job in the White House, I thought my phone battery was broken. Something wrong with my phone, it's not ringing as much. But I got 1 phone call. That's not true. I got 3. Al Gore called me, and Al Gore said, well, Van, I lost a much better job in the White House than you did. So I give Al Gore his credit. He called me. Donna Brazil called me, and a guy named Prince. And he gave me my second chance. He said, this is Prince. I said, hello. You are the most controversial man in America right now. I said, yes, sir, for better or for worse. It's for the better. Come see me. Click. I don't know where you live. What just happened to me? And luckily, about 15 minutes later, the phone rang, and it was somebody from his team. Somebody's phone's there. That's not my phone. That's your phone. Yeah, your phone. Don't you feel bad? Ain't you ashamed? She has a little phone videotaping me, and then her mom called. I don't know. We don't mind. Anyway, luckily, just on cue, one of his people called me and said, Prince says you're coming here. You need a plane ticket. How are we going to get this done? Whew. So he brought me into his camp. And I went from working for a president to working for a prince. In most countries, that's a promotion. So I was all right. And he was an amazing guy. He would stay up late at night, going on YouTube, trying to find young artists. You know, a 6-year-old on the violin or in Canada or whatever. And he'd call the parents and coach them on how you deal with extraordinary talent. And he'd go on the internet and he'd find a cause or a case or something bad, and he would, through various means, send money to help, but he never wanted anybody to know it was him. And I got a chance to be with him the last 6 years of his life. And one of the things that he did publicly, one of the few things he ever did publicly for charity, he gave away hundreds of millions of dollars. But when Trayvon Martin died, breakdown, and we were all at Paisley Park with Prince, and we were all taking turns being more upset, more angry. Prince had a way of looking at you the way a sober person looks at a drunk person. And after a while, you realize he's not saying anything. You might need to shut up. So I finally asked him, I said, Prince, what do you think? And he said, when you see a black kid wearing a hoodie, people think thug. When you see a white kid wearing a hoodie, people think Mark Zuckerberg. Why is that? I said, I don't know, P, maybe racism? I mean, it could be. He said, or maybe you have not created enough black Mark Zuckerbergs. Why aren't you focused on that? Breakthrough. I never thought about it. But just that question. Now, that doesn't dismiss the racism, but it does open a window into a world where, and typical Prince, go through the fashion statement to get there. So he had this idea, he said, I want to see 100,000 poor black Latino kids wearing hoodies, all of whom have been taught to code just like Mark Zuckerberg. That's what I want. Go out there and make it happen. Easy assignments he used to give us. So we created something called Yes We Code. and started doing hackathons all across the country. And I'll tell you this, to my great shame, the first one we did was in Oakland. And we got all these kids, again, from the hood, to come to this hackathon, this coding summit, where they're gonna come up with their own apps. We got, because the principal's involved, we got engineers from Google and Facebook and Salesforce. As I walk into this big arena, my first thought, I hope there's not a fight. Dan Jones, Mr. Civil Rights, Mr. Racial Justice, Mr. Big Time Liberal. I saw all those black kids. My first thought, I hope there's not a fight. Lets you know how deep this racial bias is. It gets all of us, myself included. But I'll tell you this, those young people were phenomenal, genius, phenomenal. By lunch, the Google engineers, the Salesforce engineers, their jaws were hanging open at how smart these kids were, how industrious they were, how creative they were. It changed, I mean, there are young people who were at that first hackathon who now have jobs in those companies. Breakdowns can become breakthroughs if you use them right. Last thing I'll say is this. Prince insisted that I get on television. He thought I had good things to say, but I was being talked about in the media as a former Obama appointee. I wasn't talking for myself. And so I wound up on CNN co-hosting a show with a guy named Newt Gingrich. The show was called Crossfire. Aptly named because it turned out we didn't agree on almost anything. And so we spent show after show after show arguing, yelling at each other until we got to one topic, criminal justice. And Newt said to me, more or less, not a direct quote, he challenged me. He said, Van, why are you so soft in your critique of prisons? Why aren't you tougher on the prison system? Why aren't you tougher on the justice system? I said, what do you mean? I kind of went through my whole thing. I spent 20 years on this thing. He goes, I know that, and I know that you've raised the issue again and again about the racial injustice and the poor black kids and the poor Latino kids and all that. But, and that's great, but I'm a conservative, and I can no longer support what is happening in our prison system. What? I sound like Scooby-Doo. I was like, what are you saying? What? He says, we now have the biggest prison system in the history of the world, the United States. We only have 5% of the world's population, 25% of the world's prisoners in the land of the free. It's a big, failed government bureaucracy that gobbles up $80 billion a year, every year, and is not accountable for any of the results. People leave just as bad as they went in, maybe worse. He says, I got libertarians in my party worrying about not just the dollars being gobbled up, but the liberties too. You never talk about that. He says, I'm a Christian conservative. Van, where is the redemption? Where are the second chances? People leave prison, a physical prison, they go into a social prison. Can't get a job, can't vote, can't rent an apartment, can't get a student loan. He says, I'm a conservative, and on fiscal reasons and liberty reasons, and just fundamental fairness reasons, I can't support this, and you never talk to me. He says, I got governors, and Rick Perry in Texas has closed 8 prisons. Liberals have said nothing about it. Governor Deal in Georgia has cut the prison population by 15, 20%. Liberals have given him no credit. You got Phil Bryant down in Mississippi, conservative governor, doing criminal justice reform right now. You guys never say anything about it, not a mumbling word. Something happening in the country where the best of our Republican sisters and brothers were taking a stand for liberty in this issue. Limited government, individual rights and dignity. And that's what our conservatives do at their best. They stand for liberty. We have been fighting for something called justice. Democrats, we don't like it when the big folks run over the little folks, or the rich folks run over the poor folks. So we saw it as a justice issue. But Newt and I came together off camera, and I brought my Democrats, he brought his Republicans, to stand for liberty and justice for all. And as a result, there's a bipartisan movement in this country, very strong here in Michigan. All these things coming together. Donald Trump signed the First Step Act. This year alone, in the last 12 months, 7,000 people have come home early from federal prison because Democrats and Republicans came together to get something done. And so breakdowns can become breakthroughs if you use them right. And I just want to encourage you here in Michigan and in Detroit. I grew up in rural West Tennessee and went to all crappy public schools, got into Yale Law School with good grades and a prayer and probably some affirmative action as well, I'm proud to say. And I've had some bad days. You've had some bad days. I've had some stuff happen in my life that I wish hadn't happened. I've done some things I wish I hadn't done, said a bunch of stuff I wish I hadn't said, often on television. And so have you. But tomorrow's more important than yesterday. And there are kids in this town who are geniuses, and nobody knows it. There are kids in this town who could make your businesses go through the roof. There are kids in this town right now who are standing on street corners who could literally change the world. And you're right here in the center of everything good in America. Everything tough, everything resilient, everything beautiful is right here in Detroit, all mixed in together with a tremendous opportunity to inspire the world. And whatever's going on in your life, and you sitting up here looking all nice and pretty, but you got some text messages you're worried about. You got some emails that are bothering you. But whatever those little breakdowns are, trust me, breakdowns can become breakthroughs. Just use them right. Thank you very much.